All right, welcome to NCSA Live. I'm happy to be with you guys here today on a snowy, rough day here in Chicago, but we're working from home, so it's not too bad. But we're coming to you live on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, talking about a really outstanding topic today that is going to start affecting a lot of football players coming into place just next week. I'm joined today once again by Phil Wells. Phil, it's been a couple months since you and I have done this together. How you been, man?
Extremely well, Kyle, and certainly glad to be back here, giving the people some updates, well needed at this point, talking about some exciting stuff, National Signing Day. But coincidental that we're joined here again by some pretty intense weather. We'll say we'll leave it at that.
I was going to say, I've been kind of down on the working from home initiative that we've all been going through, but today I was looking outside and it snowed since like 8 o'clock last night. I was like, yeah, actually working from home, pretty nice, not too bad.
Yeah, definitely agree. That's a pretty rough commute.
For sure. But as Phil kind of mentioned, today we're going to be going over National Signing Day, making your scholarship offers official. And reason being, there's a couple different signing days that come into place. The football is really going to be, the signing day for football is really going to be the one that's coming up here most immediately starting next week. But today we'll talk about the dates you need to know, what signing day is, when it starts, how long it lasts, and some misconceptions about signing day as well. We're actually in the period of signing day for most sports that started back in November. But I thought it'd be a great place to start for Phil and I to just kind of talk about our experiences with signing day as well. Phil, I don't really think I know your story all that well, so I'd love to hear just kind of your experience with signing day from your past.
Yeah, I love that, Kyle, and I love to share. And one thing I like to do to preface it is, as everyone will see, really, Kyle, from my experience and even yours here shortly, quickly, we're all going to find out that everybody's process is a little bit different. Okay, everybody's signing period is a little bit different. Although we have dates locked in stone, and sometimes they fluctuate, everybody's situation is a little bit different. And when it comes to me, I actually ended up playing football at the University of South Dakota. And when I came out of high school, it wasn't the traditional route. I actually received my national letter of intent, again, for that signing period at the time in early February at the year of which I graduated high school. And I didn't want to settle. I only received a couple different opportunities to play in college at the time. And the national letter of intent that I actually received, again, it was great. I felt honored between it, but the specific program, it just didn't really correlate well with what I was looking for out of a college. So outside of that, then I kind of streamlined it a little bit and ended up actually signing over to not a JUCO program, but it's what we call a prep school. Okay, and from there is where you actually transfer out to another university, hence me kind of landing at the University of South Dakota. But as you guys will really see here shortly, again, just because you get a national letter of intent, maybe on or before signing day or that signing period, doesn't mean we always need to sign right away. And we'll go over that a little bit more here later on, but doesn't always mean we need to sign on that dotted line. Sometimes we want to be thankful of that option, and we want to see what else is out there. And Kyle, I know you had a little bit of a different experience in that mind, but why don't you let the folks know about kind of what you went through?
For sure, yeah, a very unique experience for you, Phil, with going the prep school route. And probably it's worth taking time to take a step back as far as what the national letter of intent is, and what that is it's what you sign when you officially commit to the school you're going to attend. So once you sign that national letter of intent, that's kind of saying, I'm going to go to your school. It's accepting that scholarship. And we'll talk about some of the misconceptions with that, which is a lot different than getting a scholarship offer or verbally committing to a school earlier in your process. My process, very different from Phil's as well. I have two sisters who played college softball, and their process was very different than mine. But I went through high school and basically didn't get recruited until the fall of my senior year. Pitched at a couple of big showcases. Happened to get seen at the right time, pitched against one of the best teams in the country. They ended up winning the Perfect Game tournament in Fort Myers, Florida that year. They went undefeated except for a tie with my team. We tied 0-0. got seen at that and really got some scholarship offers from just being good, being in the right place at the right time, and having a lot of success, which led to me committing to and signing a national letter of intent to the University of New Mexico in the fall of 2004. Ended up getting drafted and playing professional baseball and opting out of that scholarship at the University of New Mexico. But for me, it was an incredibly difficult process. It was very stressful. If I could do it again, I would change it entirely, because I was very fortunate. Things just kind of happened to work out. And for most people, it doesn't necessarily go that way. For the vast majority of student athletes, they don't get that life-changing opportunity where they pitch in front of hundreds of scouts and college coaches and really kind of get that opportunity to showcase themselves. So I would change it for myself. And this is really kind of the purpose of what we're talking about today is how to make sure you're not necessarily like Phil or myself, that you only have one or two options, that more so you have a plethora of options. You have all the information in front of you. That way you can make a really educated decision on the best school for you first time around without necessarily having to shuffle things around a little bit. So diving into some of the dates, that's probably a good place to start as we are entering the football signing period coming up here. And Phil, obviously you have the great football background, so it's probably good for you to talk about just what the dates are and kind of the shifting that's gone around with them for the college football signing day coming up.
Yeah, Kyle, you prefaced it perfectly from the very start. We are talking about, dates potentially for all sports, but as far as football goes, again, we're ending January, we're right around the corner. Now, traditionally for those student athletes, again, potentially looking to sign a national letter of intent, traditionally that signing period was from the date of April 1st or February 3rd up until April 1st. Now, due to the coronavirus pandemic, that date has shifted a little bit. It's been extended. So we're still getting right into that signing period come February 3rd, a little bit over a week from now, but it has been extended to August 1st. Okay, so again, just due to that pandemic, it's allowed a little bit more time, a little bit more of an extension for athletes to still sign all the way up into August, almost when it's time to start that new school year. So that's going to be very impactful for a lot of student athletes and even a lot of college coaches who are still scrambling, looking to really seal the deal for a lot of those athletes still looking to sign as a senior. Now, as far as, things branching out a little bit from football, when we look at basketball, same type of deal. Football is more prevalent because the signing period opens up next week, essentially. For basketball, we've seen a similar extension. Traditionally, that period has been from April 14th to May 9th or May 19th, but the extension has also been up until August 1st. Okay, so as we look upon basketball, it's also a field now where, again, we have a little bit more time. It opens up in April and a few months from now, and it's going to extend all the way up until it's almost time for that school year to start in college. And then as far as the rest of the sports go, traditionally, for Division I and Division II, other sports outside of basketball and football, most of them all will actually land up until August 1st. So the main differences have really been seen between football as well as basketball, mainly really within those extensions, giving these athletes and college coaches just a little bit more time.
For sure, yeah, and like Phil mentioned, the regular signing period for most sports, that's ongoing currently. We're in that process. It started back in November of last year and currently is going through August 1st of this year. And we should note that a student athlete is only able to sign their national letter of intent in their senior year of high school. This is not something that you can sign before that starting date in November of your senior year. Anything before that would be considered a verbal commitment and would not be something that's necessarily etched in stone. It'd be more like a handshake agreement that you're going to come to that school and come to that program and receive that scholarship opportunity. But the biggest misconception around just signing a national letter of intent and getting a scholarship in the first place, a lot of people have the conception that you get to see junior senior year and then coaches see you, then you happen to just get scholarship offers. Coaches see you, they like you, they start offering you scholarship money. And one thing that we've talked about for years, for almost 20 years now, when it comes to the recruiting process, is that it's not a process that just picks up junior senior year and coaches start to figure out. It's not a process where you decide on your school and you go there academically and try out for the team. This is something that starts freshman year, some cases 8th grade, some cases even earlier than that. And that's really going to be what gives student athletes the best opportunity to have success in this process and choose that right schools by stretching it out over that course of time, by starting early as a freshman and using that time period to, have some ups and downs, to try some test and failure, to really figure out what school is going to be the right fit for you, both athletically and academically, what school is going to want you to come to their program. So it's a process that takes a lot of time, and that's one of the biggest misconceptions. So for freshmen, Phil, what should they start doing here at this point to get on the right track? We're already halfway through their first school year.
Yeah, absolutely. And when we look at that full process, starting with the underclassmen, it's about educating yourself. We always preach making sure that student athlete can find that best fit and be comfortable when we get in that realm of as a senior and starting to look to find, what that best fit is going to be and what national letter of intent we want to sign. But that starts way ahead of time. As we're coming to a close with a lot of our freshmen, it's time to educate ourselves of, hey, what do those typical dates look like? When do I want to have a good idea in mind of what kind of schools that I want to go to? Not saying as a freshman you need to have that figured out, but you need to be aware of those dates, when you do become a senior, of when those deadlines are, when you need to start figuring out, hey, I'm looking at this school versus this school, and I have this amount of time to figure it out. Okay, because again, if we go back and talk a little bit more through some of the misconceptions, a lot of student athletes and families, again, think when they receive that national letter of intent, they need to sign on to that program right away. And it's simply not the case. A lot of times when you're going through this process year by year, starting as a freshman, you have time spread out over the course of 4 years to figure out what that best fit is going to be. And then when you get that national letter of intent, when you get the first one coming in, assuming you're going to have more, you really have a great lens to view that and say, hey, is this going to be a good fit, or do I need to maybe wait a little while to more come in? Do I need to really look in different avenues to make sure, hey, I find the best fit for another potential 4 years for me as a student athlete? It's going to be extremely important for these student athletes, Kyle, in that manner, just to make sure they're weighing all options. Because another thing we often see is, student athletes, they wait a little bit and two things can happen. Once we receive that national letter of intent, we can get more offers over the course of maybe 14 days, or we can lose opportunities as well. So we do want to always make sure that, again, we're being extremely diligent on what we want out of a program. And at the end of the day, when we receive a national letter of intent, the moment you do so, you have 14 days to get it signed over. Okay, so within that period, there's a lot of flexibility of what we can do in terms of other programs, making sure we're holding all of our best options accountable and landing on our best fit program.
100%. Yeah, I mean, that's a big aspect of it. We get the notion that everybody, once signing day comes, everybody signs on that day. And again, that's a misconception that you get that national letter of intent opportunity and ability to sign on that first day, but it's not necessarily the case. And again, the vast majority of student athletes, they're not just getting those scholarship offers on that day where you can sign the national letter of intent. They've had conversations about what school they're going to be signing with, where they're going to be going for months leading up to that. In some cases, probably years, where they're going to be going. So you have 14 days as far as that goes, but also that's something you want to check with the coach. There's on the document, there's usually a deadline date. And like Phil said, there can be some good reasons to wait. Maybe you want to weigh your options. Maybe you want to have further conversations with the coaches that you're talking to. I know in my case, when I was talking with the University of New Mexico, I was also talking with Dallas Baptist University, for example. I didn't sign on the first day that I was able to. I took the entire period. I think I signed on the last day that I was able to, because I was having conversations with those different coaches. I was weighing opportunities and options from the different schools where I had scholarship offers. And what you want to do, I mean, if you're going to sign the national letter of intent, you want to be 100% sure about it. You have to know that this is what you want to do and where you want to go, because it's a legally binding document to make sure you fully understand that agreement. It's a legally binding document that I am going to attend this school and I'm going to get this scholarship offer. I'm going to take this. It's really not necessarily negotiable after that. That's going to be a 1-year agreement with that school and something that can be updated and adjusted moving forward from there. But the last thing that you want to do as a student athlete when you have these scholarship offers is sign that letter of intent to a school and then immediately regret it, or go to that school and regret it and decide that's not somewhere you want to be. Transferring is a process, but it's messy. It's not easy. It's often uncomfortable. It's often detrimental. It might, lead in bad directions. It might lead you to a different school that could be worse. Sometimes it could lead you to school that's better, but it's just not the easiest process in general. So again, that's our whole philosophy, our whole concept at NCSA is making sure that you're able to make the right decision on the first time, and that you know exactly what you're getting into, and that it's going to be the best decision for your next 4 years that are going to translate into your following 40 years after that. And so probably I should mention, if you guys haven't gotten into it, throw some questions in there, whether it's about national letter of intent or signing day or otherwise recruiting. Feel free to throw some questions in there. We'll get to those in a few minutes. But the one other aspect that I wanted us to be able to go over, Phil, was just some of the misconceptions around signing day. And I don't think this gets talked about a whole lot. I know it's not something that I've talked about a whole lot in my time at NCSA or going through this whole process. But for National Signing Day, what are some of the misconceptions out there that probably people should be aware of?
Yeah, that's huge. And this is not something that's spent a lot of time on. So I'm happy to talk about it. And I think we should go in order of importance and priority. And that's the academic portion, the admissions. Kyle, you talked a lot about, during that national letter of intent, that whole process, checking in with the coach, checking in with admissions. But one area where we want to always still pay attention to is getting accepted into the program. A lot of student athletes think that because we get a national letter of intent, that's it, that's all. We still have to make sure we're communicating with the admissions. Maybe the coach at the program is helping out with that a little bit, but we still, even though we're being considered for maybe a scholarship as an athlete, we still need to be accepted into the program. We still need to be accepted in terms of admissions. We still have to pay application fees. Some may be waived, some may not be, but we still need to go through that normal progression just as if we were a regular student. Regular students still have to, again, go through that process, and so do student athletes. But there may be a little bit more help given from the college coach, but the student athlete, is their responsibility to actually come forth and make sure all that stuff is taken care of. Like I said, more times than not, the coach will help. Now, another misconception that, again, we touched on just a little bit is just that period in which, when we first get that national letter of intent. Now, sometimes it may come a little bit before the day, and if it does, congratulations, that's huge news. And we can typically sign it as soon as 7 a.m., when that first period is, when that first date is. Okay, if we're talking football, that's 7 a.m., February 3rd. But again, just like how you mentioned, as far as that period goes, that 14-day window, a lot of athletes think, hey, if I wait that full 14 days, then, my current scholarship offers are going to stay intact. If I wait 3 weeks outside of that, my current scholarship offers are going to stay intact. That's not always the case. And that's where it comes to over communicating with that coach. Just like Kyle, you mentioned, maybe you're looking at different options, other colleges, communicating with other coaches. Those college coaches may be doing the same thing. They may have sent you that national letter of intent with hopes of an answer right away before they move on to the next athlete. So those are conversation, and that's communication that needs to be had amongst that student athlete, amongst that family, amongst that coaching staff, and amongst that admissions department to make sure all cylinders are covered. It is a national or national in a binding contract. So we have to make sure all the checks or all the boxes are checked.
For sure. Again, if you guys have any questions, feel free to throw them in there. We'll get to them here in a second, whether it's about National Signing Day, national letter of intent, or just anything about recruiting in general. And the one piece to add on, with misconceptions is that When it comes to signing day, if you're at that point where a college is or a coach is asking you to sign a national letter of intent, for the most part, most schools, most coaches are going to verify that you're going to be able to get into the school. They're going to know that you're someone who can come to that school in the first place and will get accepted once you apply. So that's the good news when it comes to that. It's not super typical that someone is going to sign a national letter of intent and then it turns out they can't get into the school in the first place. Where we do see that a little bit more would be the Division III level, which we haven't talked about a ton. Where at the Division III level, you don't sign a national letter of intent. It's a different process. They don't have athletic scholarships, so you're not going to be signing a national letter of intent to accept a scholarship in the first place. You're going to see that a lot more at Division III schools, especially high academic Division III schools, where they have to make sure that you are academically eligible to get in that school, that you have the type of grades and test scores to get in that school that would merit you being there and being able to have success in that program, just as a generality. I can talk about a personal experience of mine. I used to coach travel softball, and one of my players, she was applying to the University of Chicago, which is a very high academic school. And her process was she had to apply to the school. She was getting recruited. They said, apply to the school. If you get in, then you will be on the team here. And then there was another player at that school, one of their top recruits, who was going to be brought into the school, was going to be part of the team, was going to be their number one recruit coming in. Her test grades weren't high enough. Her grades were not good enough. So they had to pull their offers because she was not going to get into the school once applying. Upon applying, she would not have gotten into the school. So Phil nailed it on the head. Academics play such a huge role in this. And obviously, parents, you guys care about that as much or more than anything. But for student athletes out there, obviously it's not all about sports. High level schools athletically, they're going to take high level athletes, but the higher academic student athletes, they're going to have a little bit of an edge over student athletes that are equal to them on the athletic level. So it's one of the biggest aspects of it, again, as far as the Division III schools go. Phil, do you have anything to add around the Division III side of things? Obviously, it's a little bit different with not having a national letter of intent.
Yeah. So Division IIIs, and again, we haven't talked a whole lot about it, but the other aspect of it is Division IIIs, they don't give out scholarships athletically. So that is a piece of the component when it comes to not having a national letter of intent, because most of them for Division I and Division II are tied typically to a scholarship. So for Division IIIs, while they do have a lot of the same components athletically and academically, again, no national letter of intent, but I would say the communication with the admissions and the coaching staff typically at Division III programs, way more frequent than not, way more personable than not, because we want to make sure that coming into a Division III program, you feel completely comfortable with that program, with that staff, with that culture, academically and athletically, because that's a team where you're not necessarily tied to a scholarship, where there's not a lot of binding contracts that you're tied to, but we want this to be home for you. And that's that Division III mindset. And a lot of families do choose Division III because they feel that it has more of a family or cultural aspect that definitely meets the needs of a student athlete, in terms of excelling academically and excelling in what they feel is a comfortable campus. So when it comes to Division IIIs, not as many stipulations with contracts and certain dates as far as the national letter of intent goes. But as far as Division III goes, just in general, you still want to start the process early. You still want to make sure you're researching the school to the utmost. You still want to make sure that communication is really the highest overall with those Division III schools, outside of Division I and Division II, because you're going outside of a scholarship and you want to make sure it's certainly a great fit for you. And as far as questions go, guys, I start sending those in, send more in, and we can definitely answer more questions as it pertains to Division III. But as far as D1 and D2, we typically just see a little bit more stipulations there because of those in their lives. And if we have some questions here, all right. It looks like we have a question from Amanda with the extension for 2021. Is there any impact on college coaches looking at and offering football players during spring ball. Who are 2022? Okay, Kyle, you want to take a stab at that one, or I can take it? I know it's football.
Yeah, I can jump in there. Sorry, I think I cut out there for a little bit. The snowy weather here, I think, knocked down my entire building. You want to throw that question back up there, Tommy? I can. I'll be happy to jump in on it. With the extension for the 2020, is there any impact college coaches looking at and offering football players during spring ball who are 2022s? Yeah, one thing with football, Amanda, is that college coaches, they don't just start looking at student athletes senior year. They don't just start offering scholarships senior year. With football, we can look at 2024 graduates, student athletes who are just coming towards the end of their freshman year, who are already getting scholarship offers. You can look at 247 Sports and look at a school like Florida State's a great example. They have probably about 30 scholarship offers already out to 2024 graduates. So, in regard to the situation we're in, obviously that's going to create some issues. It's going to create a lot of confusion with the quarantine and teams not necessarily playing. But just even going back before that, college coaches were looking at student athletes earlier than that. They still will continue to, because they're going to be trying to pick up the best prospects they possibly can. So definitely there will be 2022s who are getting scholarship offers this spring. There already are scholarship offers going out to 2022 graduates this spring. There are already student athletes who are verbally committed for football. It's a process that's very, very aggressive. And one of the reasons is because student athletes don't have any restrictions. They can reach out to and call a college coach at any time, essentially. And if that coach picks up the phone, they can have an hour-long conversation for them. So that really kind of unchains the process and allows coaches to start quite a bit earlier for football than maybe some of the other sports where they might wait for like times to come around in track or in swimming, where they're seeing where their times are going to fall junior, senior year. But really good question. We have another one coming up there. Yeah, from Michael, and I'll throw this one to you, Phil. Do schools preclude you from obtaining academic funds, scholarships, if you receive athletic scholarship funding? Well, preclude, really trying to nail us on that one, Michael. But go ahead, Phil, if you want to answer that.
Yeah, awesome question, Mike. And it depends. It's a case-by-case situation. Some coaches will typically like to split it up between, what their roster looks like and what they're able to give out. If we have a kid that can get an athletic scholarship and, they need to fund a little bit more of their roster to bring in, more of that championship feel, then they may spread that out a little bit. But the short answer is no. If you're a student athlete and you receive an athletic scholarship, that doesn't necessarily preclude you from just receiving funding as far as the student goes, as far as merit goes, as far as any other scholarships that you may receive from being a good student, just from being or having great scholastics. Really, you want to stack that stuff on sometimes. And that's really, the main part of being a really good student athlete. Hence, student athlete versus athletic student. Those student athletes have that preference more times than not, to get extra funding, okay, and apply that to other areas of expense when it comes to college. So the short answer is no, but I would definitely always check into that specific institution to see what the exact game plan is for the rest of the roster.
Yeah, the other piece of that is depending on the sport. Some sports like football, it's all athletic scholarship. Women's volleyball is all athletic scholarship at the Division I level. Basketball, very much similar. So most of the sports are not equivalency sports that way, where it's all athletic scholarship money. Most sports like baseball, softball, they're going to combine athletic and academic scholarship. A great question. You guys go to the next one for sure. Kimberly asks, what about recruiting from Ivy Leagues? Do they have a national letter of intent? So Ivy Leagues, they're very different in that Ivy League schools, they do not offer athletic scholarships. So I'm not sure I 100% have an answer as far as the NLI goes for an Ivy League school, but I'm guessing it's very much different in that they don't have a national letter of intent because they don't have athletic scholarships. Their student athletes are still very much recruited. They're still bringing in athletic prospects they've been looking at for years. But obviously they have to have the grades to get into that school as well. So Phil, do you have a little bit more inference on that? Are you 100% on the NLIs for Ivy Leagues?
So still not 100%, but I do. It operates more similar than or to a high academic Division III institution. Okay, so again, no official scholarship given, but obviously these Ivy League institutions are very high academically selective. So a lot of money is, hence they're given between different merits and different scholarship grants you can actually receive academically, but no athletic scholarships. But again, because we see such a high competitive sport level when it comes to most Ivy League programs, again, college coaches typically find different grants that, you know, student athletes can still very much take advantage of. And the main difference outside of Division III, although they operate in similar ways, those Ivy League schools, they compete with, you know, some of your top most competitive schools out there. So in terms of scholarships, no scholarships given, and not too sure on the NLI, you'll definitely be able to connect and look over our website to figure out the exact info there. But it operates more so like a Division III program.
Yeah, I actually did a quick brain scan, and it turns out they do not offer an NLI specifically for the reason we talked about, that they don't have athletic scholarships. So no NLI at the Ivy League schools. That being said, still recruiting just the same way any other schools are. Katie asks, do NAIAs have NLI? Can you compare NAIA in Division III programs and colleges? Pros and cons, main focus, academics, athletics, secondary. Which is probably pretty common for most student athletes, Katie. Probably most student athletes are more focused on the academic side of things. 99.9% of student athletes are not going to play their sport after high school, so that's understandable. NAIA, they do have a national letter of intent. It's a very different process. They're not governed by the NCAA, so they have a completely different process as far as what it takes to qualify, what it takes to get into the schools. They do have athletic scholarships, so it's not comparable to Division III. Some of the teams athletically might be comparable to Division III. Some can be comparable to Division II programs. A lot of the track programs can be better than Division II programs. So in some of those ways, they can be similar, but very different than the NCAA Division III in that they do offer athletic scholarships, and it's going to be based on the school, based on the program and their full scholarship level. It's really interesting in sports like baseball. They actually have more scholarship money than NCAA Division I programs. They have 12 versus 11.7 at Division I schools.
Very good question there.
Yeah, looks like we have one more. Phil, you can take this one.
Yeah, so when you enter the transfer portal and go from NAIA Division II to JUCO, what type of scholarships are available? So in this particular case, it would very much depend on the specific programs. Now, when you're transferring out and going to a JUCO, and maybe you guys can put that question back up for us one time. When you go to a junior college, typically some of them will have some kind of scholarships where it'll cover a percentage. You know, a lot of times, you know, it can cover tuition and maybe not room and board. Those are a lot of popular options we see with your junior colleges. But typically, the tuition is going to be dramatically less than, you know, Division II or an NAIA program. And even if you are receiving, we'll say NAIA, even if you are receiving a scholarship from an NAIA program and opt out and go over to JUCO, that scholarship doesn't go along with you. Okay, any kind of funding that JUCO may want to offer you, that's what's going to actually, you know, move forward. And that's typically where we'll see that some kind of partial scholarship or funding is given. And a lot of families have to actually cover their room and board to some extent.
Awesome. Great questions from everyone, and really good topic. If you guys have more questions, reach out to us at ncsasports.org or NCSA live at ncsasports.org as well. But as we do every week, we're going to celebrate some of the recent student athletes we've had come through and actually commit and sign their national letter of intent to school. So Phil, you're going to take Allison here. We're going to take a couple, and then I'm going to talk about a little story as well.
Obviously, you guys can see it right there. We got Allison coming up. Again, California State University at Long Beach. Really good action shot of Allison. Obviously, you know, I was never tough enough to run some track myself. You got to have that good endurance, but great action shot from Allison, getting the job done. And huge congratulations to her going to a really good program.
Cool, and we're going to skip Dominic real quick. We'll go to our third commitment, and then we'll come back to him for to finish it out. And Phil, you can take it as well.
Absolutely. You guys see Kayla coming up with a nice jump shot there. Huge congrats to Kayla. Nice editing work as well. We see her on the court taking a great shot. We got her committed over to William Jessup University. Really solid program, and we wish the best off to Kayla as she continues to perform on the court.
Phil, you know that's better form on her jump shot than yours.
Absolutely. If she asked me for a one-on-one, I had to look the other direction, sadly.
She's got me beat too. Just give me the ball down in the low post. Awesome. And then we'll go back to Dominic for a pretty special commitment that we have coming through. You can see Dominic's committed to the University of Findlay, which is the Division II program. And this is a student athlete who never actually ended up using NCSA services. This is a family that was in contact with us and listened to a lot of our webinars, and I'm guessing probably jumped on and watched some of our NCSA live broadcasts to get a ton of information just on the recruiting process and how to be navigating as well. And Dominic went through one of the most tumultuous processes, not just through recruiting, but just through life, it seems like, being diagnosed with Crohn's and colitis when he was in elementary school, and then having to deal with it over the last several years. It's been something that's been going on for the last 4 or 5 years for him, that he's had several flare-ups. He's had to go off and on several different medications. He's had ups and downs. He was actually diagnosed with COVID earlier last year and had to fight through that as well. Obviously, that's incredibly dangerous with someone who had previously existing conditions like Dominic. And so he fought through a lot, had an incredibly up and down process. He took tests in the hospital. He applied for schools in the hospital, and he was doing everything he needed to do on top of being in the hospital and on top of going through an incredibly difficult disease. He was playing through pain. He was doing everything that he needed to do on his end, and was actually able to end up committing to Findlay University. And his mom reached out to us and thanked us for just the information and everything that we've been able to do for them. You know, despite not having used a membership with us, they were able to use the information and guidance that they got from, like I said, our webinars and NCSA Live, and just the conversations that we've had with Dominic over the last few years. So I wanted to shout out Dominic as well. Obviously, an incredible story of perseverance and really just kind of stick-to-itiveness to get himself to that next collegiate level. But great story. I know you heard that one this last week as well, Phil.
Yeah, man, that's what it's all about. I mean, happy for all the commits, and you know, when we come on week by week, and you know, we express that huge congratulations. I mean, this is what it's all about. You know, as far as these athletes going through the 4-year journey, you know, sometimes even longer, aiming for what they see as the best fit program, and then we have a story like this where, you know, this kid Dominic, he's went through the trials and tribulations and still found success. That's what it's all about.
For sure. Awesome. So we'll close it out. Tune in next week, again, every Tuesday at 2 p.m. Central Time. Next week, we're going to be talking about signs a college coach is interested in you, which is incredibly difficult. It's almost like trying to determine whether or not a girl has a crush on you, which in my life has never happened, so I wouldn't know. But should be an incredibly interesting topic for you guys next week. If you guys have any questions, like I said, reach out to us at live@ncsasports.org. or go to our website, ncsasports.org. Otherwise, it's great being with you guys here this weekend. Phil, always a pleasure.
Always.
See you guys next week.
See you guys.